fall too hard and lose faith.
Hello, and today we are continuing in G.J. Walker Smith's Wishes series. It's the third book, Storm Shells. If you don't know who she is, she's an Australian YA author, although honestly by this point it's more NA, not necessarily because of content, but because of age. Although if you want to go by content, it's still pretty tame. I mean, the whole series is pretty tame. There are allusions to things, but there's nothing explicit. Storm Shells, we have changed things up a little bit. And so instead of only having Charli's perspective, we have Charli and Adam. If you didn't see my other reviews, the first book, Saving Wishes, is about two people, Charli and Adam, who have a meet cute and they fall in love, and then at the end of the book, she realizes that it's just not going to work out because their lives are too different, and so she sends him packing. The second book, Second Hearts, they've been apart for a year. She has been off surfing with a friend, and she realizes, I don't really want this beach bum life. My heart is elsewhere. So she travels to New York to find Adam and basically apologize and say she still loves him. And they get back together, and they end up getting married. But then they end up getting a divorce because he's pursuing this law degree, and he can't put her first. So she's like, I love you, I know you love me, but it's just not going to work. So she goes back to Australia. Here we pick up with them divorced. And not really a spoiler, but I'll say spoiler alert anyways. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. I like this book. I like the entire series. I really do. However, I do have, and as much as I love Charli, I mean, she's extremely charming and just enchanting. I cannot always relate to her mindset. I am very black and white. If Adam was being a jerk to me, I would let him know it. For a little bit I might take it, but I would not just give in and be understanding of his circumstances. And I don't understand why Charli does that, especially because she's supposed to be a character who does not do that. Anyway, so she has a very magical sense of reality, and she has this idea of kind of a 5-minute rule where it might not last forever, but at least we have 5 minutes. And so hers and Adam's marriage and their love was just a 5-minute piece of time that she would rather have that 5 minutes than never have had it at all. And so even though they're divorced, they still love each other, which I know people say that all the time, but honestly, like, there are no hard feelings by either of them. So I feel like that's kind of what weakens Storm Shells for me, is that I just want there to be an argument. I want there to be tension. I want something, some kind of emotion from Charli. And so by this point, I'm like, how can you really go by the flow that much? Maybe it is her small town Australian surfer mindset. I wouldn't know because, as I said, I'm type A. I'm very black and white. I could never live that way. I would be like, yes, let's stay in New York because this is my speed. Any issue that I really have in Storm Shell is I don't feel like Charli has enough growth. Like, she just still continues to take things as they come. And it's like she's not really seeing the world as it is. And I just really want something to be happening between her and Adam. Like, I want there to be pain. Because sure, you can still be in love. And, like, you don't really want a divorce, but you're divorcing because it's not working out. But I want there to be pain because of that. I get it. They both still really love each other and they want to be together. But the only one I really get any angst from is Adam. Let's circle back to where I was trying to start from. She has been in Australia a couple weeks, maybe a month, month and a half, and now it is Christmas, and Adam is like, I want to see her, I want to be with her. So he goes to Australia, and they learn she is pregnant. So that's the spoiler. That's not really a spoiler, because it happens early on, and it's kind of the crux of the novel, in a sense. At least it's the crux of their relationship. which way are they going to go? Are they going to stay divorced, or are they going to get back together? They find out she's pregnant, and Adam, because he's 23 and she's 20, he's like, I can't be a father. We can't even figure out how to stay married. So he essentially, he doesn't force her to get an abortion, but he encourages it. He just says, this is not the best idea for us right now. And so she goes off and she says, all right, I had it done. Now you can leave, all right? Because she's all about going with her first instinct, and aborting the baby was not her first instinct. And so for once we kind of get a little bit of angst from her. And she's like, that's not what I wanted to do. You essentially forced me into it, so I want nothing to do with you. So he goes back to New York, and his life basically falls to pieces. If you haven't seen the previous review, and I probably didn't even touch on it as much as I should have, you know, his whole life has been about being a lawyer. He's from a very wealthy family, and there's a lot of expectations. His father is a lawyer, so it's just been expected that's what he would do ever since he was 10. That is what he's wanted to do. Obviously, that is why he and Charli broke up, because he was more focused on his education and his future plans than on her. And so he's realizing, maybe this is not what I want to do. Maybe where my heart is with Charli. And even though I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, maybe it was more about my parents' influence than really what I wanted. He does have one pal. Her name is Trieste. And she's someone else that I have an issue with in the novel, because I don't really see the point of her, except that she is his one outlet. As I said, he is in law school, he's finishing up, and she's a first-year law student. And so she's introduced as needing a tutor, but she doesn't need a tutor. So she approaches him, and she's like, you're my last chance, all my other tutors, because she's a really weird character, real quirky, and people are just like, I can't handle you. She's like, you're my last chance, everybody else has turned me away. And then he quickly realizes she's so intelligent, she's acing all of her classes. And so it's really never discussed, never explored why she needs a tutor, except that is her role in the book, is to be his one companion. The person who kind of brings him around, keeps him from being a total hermit, tells him how it really is. I would have liked to have Trieste explored a little bit. Did she just want a friend? Because she has no friends, because she's so weird, nobody can put up with her. And even Adam at first is like, you're so weird, I want nothing to do with you. But she dogs him, like she will not leave him alone. And then she's like, okay, well, she's still weird, but she grew on me. So he has Trieste, and over the course of his point of view, he's just like, I should never have asked Charli to get an abortion. I was a complete jerk to her. I should not have put my career before her. And of course, Trieste is like, it's about time you figured it out. And he goes back to Piper's Cove, which is where the story started, which is where Charli's from. Charli's side of things is she never had an abortion. Oh, maybe I should have prefaced that with spoiler alert, except it's not really a spoiler alert because we figured it out pretty quickly. We have his perspective, in which she tells him, and then we get her perspective, which basically says, I didn't do it. So it's not really a spoiler. He's kind of mundane in this book. There's not a whole lot going on with her. The one thing, which is kind of another problem for me, in the first book, in Saving Wishes, she has a best friend named Nicole. However, and she and Nicole, all their lives, had been planning on getting out of Piper's Cove once they had graduated and just exploring the world. Adam enters the picture, and Nicole gets put on the back burner. Nicole then latches onto another boy, and then in the end of the book, she steals money that Adam had left for Charli's travels. Nicole and this boy jet out of town with the money. Now Nicole is back. Nobody knows what happened between her and the boy. Charli really wants nothing to do with her because she freaking stole $15,000. And I'm like, girl, be mad, never talk to her again. This girl does not, I don't care if you're BFFs. There are some lines you do not cross. Once they have been severed, they need to stay severed. We can forgive and forget, but like Lauren Conrad said in The Hills, I can forgive you and now I want to forget you. So I have a huge problem with Charli letting Nicole back into her life. Not because of my stance on how it should have gone, but because I thought it was just a little too easy. Charli is a character, she's very strong-willed. She knows what she wants. So it really did not take much for Nicole to get back into Charli's life. Part of it could be loneliness, but then again, how lonely do you have to be to let a snake back into your house? You know what I'm saying? Granted, there's a decent period of time that Charli is back in Australia that she is giving Nicole the cold shoulder. Alex does not know that Nicole had stolen this money, and so he allows her to work in his coffee shop again. And of course, he doesn't understand why Charli is so mean to Nicole. There's a point where Charli needed a ride, and Alex, who is, okay, if you haven't seen my other reviews, Alex is Charli's dad. However, he had her when he was 17, so he raised her like he was her brother. That's over with. The point where Alex was like, I'm not giving you a ride home, but Nicole can. So Nicole does. And Charli, I guess, is extremely intrigued by why Nicole is back in town and what happened to Ethan. Like, what happened in the span of time after the money was stolen. That's kind of the door that was cracked open to allow a friendship. Much as Charli says, I don't trust Nicole, she spends an awful lot of time with her. And when I say Adam is rich, I'm talking like filthy, all right? Tons of money. Naturally, Charli benefited from that, and even though she doesn't really have any of the money herself, because they're not divorced yet, and there was no prenup, so if they had been divorced, she would have gotten a lot of money. But anyway, she doesn't have any money, but she does have things. She has a lot of clothes. Of course, Nicole notices Charli's ridiculous rings and her fancy clothes. And I'm like, I would be super concerned having any of that stuff lying around, especially in front of somebody I do not trust. So anyways, they're repairing their friendship, even though Charli is still wary. And I quote that because she says she's wary, but she does not act like she's wary. She, in my opinion, lets Nicole back in exactly the way that she had before. Yeah, Charli's storyline is pretty mellow. There's not a whole lot going on except the pregnancy and Nicole. And obviously Charli is not telling Adam about her pregnancy. And then we enter Ryan. Ryan is Adam's brother. And he got his law degree, but he decided, I don't really want to go into law. I want to run businesses. So he has a couple restaurants. In Second Hearts, Adam had signed over his partnership in one of their restaurants to Charli. And now that they're divorced, Ryan is having to send all this paperwork to Charli, which she does not look at and send back. And so he's like, well, I'm just going to go buy her out. So he comes to Australia, and he's kind of the Jiminy Cricket kind of character, like, you need to tell Adam. Overall, he just kind of spends a lot of time with Alex chopping wood and learning how to surf. There is something about Piper's Code that can turn the most New Yorker, like the most straight arrow, narrow-minded person into a bum who wears flannel and likes to act like Paul Bunyan or Kelly Slater. He comes there with a purpose, but then he doesn't really do much except remind Charli that she needs to tell Adam. He never actually goes through with having her sign over her half of the restaurant to him, and then he leaves. And the day he leaves is the day that Adam comes back. He has finally realized, I want Charli in this life. And so he shows up on her front porch at the very moment her water has broken. So that's about the middle of the novel. In terms of plotting, The book doesn't move as quick of a pace as I would prefer, because once the baby was born, I was kind of ready for things to be wrapped up. I still loved this book, but in terms of pacing, it wasn't her strongest. In terms of characterization, it was not her strongest. And so I guess maybe it's the typical middle book, because I guess maybe there's only one more. Actually, technically there's two more. But the last one, she was supposed to have released like 3 years ago, and she hasn't done it. Anyways, Charli has had the baby. Adam's there, and things seem to be fine, although, of course, she still doesn't trust his reasoning. She thinks that he's there for the baby. In reality, he had decided to come home before he even knew she was still pregnant. So they work things out, and then she realizes somebody has been stealing from her. Obviously, it's Nicole. They get Nicole arrested, and that's kind of the end of the story, where we realize Nicole... I say we realize, it's only Charli who realizes this. Like, anybody with half a brain, or as suspicious as I am, could see that it was just too easy. Yeah, we realize that Nicole has been stealing from Charli because apparently she's had this deep-seated jealousy of Charli for who knows how long. Nicole goes to jail, and then we realize that Ethan, who is the boy that Nicole had run off with, he was never actually out of the picture. The stories Nicole told weren't really true, and what they really had been after were Charli's wedding rings, which she had hidden in a bag of coffee. He comes, and he's like, give me your rings, because Adam is now in New York to take his bar exam, just to kind of close that chapter. And Charli, oh my gosh, this is what I'm talking about with plotting. She talks him around. She throws off the rings. She tosses them in the brush. And then she's like, so what's really the problem? You know, and she's like, you really don't want to do this. You just are tired of, like, you're just stuck in a rut. And so then she calls the airlines, books him a ticket to Africa so that he can join their mutual friend, and she's like, just get out of town, get away from here, start over, get your act together. Another subplot gets tied up in which Alex had been dating. So if you have not seen my first review, Adam comes to Piper's Cove because his cousin, Gabrielle, is a teacher at Charli's school, and that's how they meet. So Gabrielle and Alex had been secretly dating, and now, obviously it's not a secret, but they have been trying to get pregnant, and the entire book, they have been unable to get pregnant, but at the end of the book, spoiler, they're pregnant. That's kind of how it wraps up. And, oh no, actually, it ends with 3 years later, and Charli, who's a photographer, has opened a gallery, and pretty successful, which is obviously another thing that happens in book land. You can be successful so easily, so fast. And she's approached by an art dealer from Manhattan, and so now Charli, Adam, and their daughter Bridget are headed back to New York. I keep saying I love this book. Maybe love is a strong word. I greatly like this book, but I just had a really hard time, and it's funny because, okay, look, my pages are falling out, right? So I know that's not Walker's fault. That is whoever she hired to do the binding. I bought this book off Amazon because, if you can't tell, I'm not Australian. So for a self-published author, she's not really going to have her books on Barnes & Noble shelves. So I wanted to treat myself for my birthday, so I bought the set off Amazon, and yeah, anyways. So I ended up finishing the book on my iPad, which is where I had read it the first however many times I've read it, and so I could see all of my notes. I completely agree with myself. I do not understand how these characters work, how these situations are so problematic. I mean, I know this is kind of off topic, but not really, because we're talking about my frustrations with the book now. As much as I'm charmed by Charli and Adam, I'm frustrated because things are just far too easy. Like I said with Ethan, where I mean, honestly, it's really a good little build-up because things seem to be fine. Nicole is in jail. She's getting her justice. And then Charli turns around and finds Ethan holding her infant daughter. And it's like, oh no, what's going to happen? And he's really quite menacing. And then the baby makes a noise, frightens Ethan, and he gives the baby to Charli. And I'm like, okay, so really, where's the danger? Unless he's got a gun hidden in the waistband of his pants. Then he obviously makes his demand, and she, like it's nothing, throws away $20,000 worth of diamonds, and then she's just like, well, Ethan, you're just tired. I've been there. You know, I wanted to get out of Piper's Cove, but now I've found where I found my place. What you need is to find your place. And he's like, yeah, you know, like I just don't know what to do with myself. I'm in a hole, and she just picks up her phone and makes a reservation for him, and I'm like, money at its finest. And that just goes back to, I do not understand Charli. Like, there's benevolence, and then there's insanity. I just don't understand her motivations sometimes. So in the very first book, Charli is painted as like a rebel without a cause. She's just a little hellion, which makes her romance with Adam ironic because she does not get along with his cousin. She does not get along with Gabrielle. Like she will not, because Gabrielle is the French teacher. She does not like taking French. She does not do her classwork. She does not do her homework. She's always getting put in detention. She's someone that you don't really want to cross because she's really good at retaliation. And in that is this rivalry she has with this group of girls that she has labeled the Beautifuls, because they just think highly of themselves and they like to dress up in like glitter and heels and, you know, all this stuff that Charli thinks is ridiculous. The head Beautiful, her name is Jasmine. She is getting married in Storm Shells. And when I say they are enemies, I'm talking like mortal enemies. These two girls hate each other. The first time that Jasmine sees Charli again, she runs up to her squealing and throws her arms around Charli. And of course Charli's like, what? But it's kind of like that the entire book, where I was like, you're mortal enemies. So Jasmine, why would you ask Charli to be in your wedding party? Like, literally, the only reason she did it was because Charli was blonde and fit. And I'm like, my worst enemy would, it doesn't matter how small the town is, my worst enemy would never come to me. Like, there's no amount of desperation that would incite asking me to be in their wedding party. All these little interactions where I'm like, there was no forgiveness. There was no point of understanding. So why are you on such friendly-ish terms? You know, it's just not explained. It's not explored. And then, you know, obviously that goes back to the Nicole thing, where it's the same deal, where Charli just lets Nicole back into her life really with no explanation. And I cannot buy that. Like, this book is supposed to be realistic in terms of fictional reality. And so I expect things to be linear. I expect things to make sense. And those are the sorts of things that do not make sense. How easy it is to just bring someone into the fold. And even like Charli, she says it over and over. She's like, why would Jasmine be so friendly with me when we are enemies? But then again, Charli, why are you so friendly with her? I mean, maybe I do not understand the capabilities of a small town. Maybe when a town is as small as this one appears to be, anything can happen. But I just can't. I think that's about it. I want to say there are some more issues, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. I do recommend this. I can be extra harsh just because I have high expectations for everything, but don't let my nitpicking discourage you from trying this book. Obviously, I don't really recommend it for boys. Probably even grown women who are a little more mature than me, you probably won't get your kicks out of this novel. But if you are looking for just kind of a sweet romance that is not high on drama and is full of magic, it's not necessarily Storm Shells in and of itself, but the entire series, because you do have to read them all. You could not pick up Storm Shells and really know what's going on. I don't recommend buying the physical copies because they are not well done. Is there anywhere I can go to complain about that? Actually, looks like I dog-eared some pages. Let's see why I dog-eared them. Well, give me a minute. I read through the pages I dog-eared, and I guess I kind of remember or understand why I dog-eared them, but I kind of already glanced through them in my rant, so we're not going to go over that. I hope you like this review. It's probably a little different because I kind of tore apart a book that I really love. That just kind of goes to show how you can still love a plot and characters, but hate it at the same time. Because I read it all the way through. It was probably my 5th time reading it, and I've been bothered every single time. There's just things that capture your imagination, and you read them no matter what kind of issues you may have with them. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything else that you want me to read. Happy reading, and I'll see you next time. Bye!